Well, good morning. It's Rian Kutsia from Fortis Proactive Defense Solutions up here in Pretoria. Today, I am talking to Gideon Joubert again. A lot of you will know him as the guy from Paratus. This is a man with a lot of knowledge about a lot of things. And today we will be talking about what it means to be your own first responder. Gideon, welcome back. Thank you. Nice talking to you as always.
Rian, thank you for the invitation to speak to you and the listeners, and thank you for the flourish and the introduction. It makes me sound a lot more serious than I see myself to be, but I'm not going to correct you. I'm going to definitely accept the compliment. Thank
you. let's go with that.
Yeah.
Gideon, lots of people mention this. You need to be your own first responder, but I do fear that there are a lot of people who either don't grasp the severity of it or exactly what it entails. And of course, there are a lot of people who think it's a little bit of rocket science and it's not something that they deem necessary. What
Well,
does
they also
this
look at
entail?
it. Yeah, they don't look at it holistically either, because to be your own first responder goes far beyond. Let's say you're one of the 5 to 10% of people that actually in the firearm owning community that own a firearm, and you are extremely proficient with it defensively, as in you put in a lot of time and effort into developing and anchoring that specific skill set, but it's the only thing you know. You are not actually adequately equipped to be your own first responder, because you also need to develop a combative mindset outside of the firearm skill. You need to develop your situational awareness, which is also a skill set and a knowledge set. It's not just something that you happen to do. Having some form of first aid or stop the bleed skill and knowledge is important. Something as simple as, what is your physical condition, right? You don't have to be a CrossFitter or a boxer, but are you fit enough for your age and your what the limits are of your physical condition to save your own life? I really like Dave Spalding's take on, well, how fit is fit enough? Well, you will have a good idea about what your physical condition should ideally be, but
Yes.
you don't have to go out there and compete for Mr. Olympia or the world's strongest man, but be fit enough to actually be able to deal with adverse circumstances and have the necessary strength and flexibility and cardiovascular fitness to be able to perform these basic tasks. There's actually a wide smorgasbord of skills and knowledge that goes into the concept of being your own first responder, or being an active participant in your own rescue. Knowing how to change a tire, for example, one of those things that I don't know if kids really know how to do it these days, or people in general, especially urbanites. I know if you find someone in the platteland, they definitely know how to do it, but there are holistic skills or skill sets that feed into the holistic picture of what a first responder in your private capacity should look like. That I think people don't always look at the bigger picture. They focus very much on, well, can I win a gunfight? And my answer to that would be, that's a good question, but do you know how to avoid a gunfight? Right? And do you know how to manage what comes after the gunfight? Because the gunfight itself is a very small part. It's a very vital part of a violent confrontation that ends up with shots being fired, and you have to win it, and you have to get that part right if you're confronted with it. But that's not the only part.
Yeah, I think there are circumstances also that add to the problem, if you want to call it that. Well, I think it is a problem. I'm sitting here thinking now specifically of these very fancy golf lifestyle, wildlife type of estates with very serious security. You see a totally different style I've been there. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense to live in those places. I would love to do so myself. But I do think it kind of screws with your with your whole approach of being your own first responder, in the sense that it makes you a little bit tame, because at home you can now relax so much more, which is one of the top reasons why you would stay in a place like that. So you don't see burglar bars and stuff like that generally. I get all that, but I've spoken to a few people who don't consider this approach to be something that, the idea seems to be that they are living there to get away from it. But only a part of your life is in that estate. The rest must still be spent outside the estate, isn't that?
Well, that's the thing. A high security upmarket golf estate is really just outsourcing your personal safety to a existing security apparatus and infrastructure that you fund. And that's fine. I mean, that's in theory what society does if it has a functional police force. But that said, there's also an understanding, even in places with functioning police forces, that the police are not there to act as your personal guardians. They're there to fight crime in aggregate and in general. What happens to you in an interpersonal criminal confrontation is your baby, and that's your responsibility to deal with. Now, you live in a lifestyle estate like that, you're going to be at a much lower risk of being confronted with a violent criminal confrontation in the boundaries of that lifestyle estate. Note that I say at a lower risk, not at no risk. You can never entirely eliminate the risk. You can just lower the chances of it manifesting in a threat incident. The fact is that the threat that you're trying to reduce the likelihood of occurring still exists, and that your capability of managing the threat when it manifests directly in your presence or at you or to you, affecting you directly, you still need to have something in the bank to manage the threat with. And understanding risk and low risk versus medium risk versus high risk versus threat is something that people tend to confuse a little bit. They use risk and threat interchangeably, and the two are not the same. So the risk really is just, what is the likelihood of an adverse event happening, and how do I profile it on its cost or its severity versus its likelihood? And then threat being, what is the person or thing that poses harm to me, and what form will that come in? And I mean, we've seen heists happening in extremely high security, very upmarket estates, and we've seen heists happen and very bad things happen right outside the gates of them. And the fact is that you cannot entirely isolate yourself ever in a bubble that's 100% secure from these bad things penetrating through. But what you can do is you can equip yourself with the necessary mindset, skill set, and equipment in order to deal with the manifestation of that threat when it should and does happen. And I still think there are people that also think that investing in something like that, if you live in a lifestyle estate or something, is a type of paranoid frame of mind, where I disagree with that quite strongly. And I go, I don't think there's anything paranoid about taking direct control and responsibility for circumstances or for things that taking control for your decisions regarding situations that are otherwise beyond your control. You cannot control a criminal profiling and targeting you, or whether it's opportunistic or whether it's more planned, but you can control your own response capabilities and capacities in the event of it happening. This is where you see strange things, like people who would immigrate from South Africa to a place like Canada, for example. It was quite a high-profile case a few years ago, to get away from the violent crime here and to go live in a safer, more high-trust society like Canada. And you're staying in one of the safest cities in the world. And what happens is, within months of you moving to Canada, you go jogging in one of the parks and you end up getting raped, which is what happened to this lady in a park in Canada. You know, if she had pepper spray on her or something, maybe it would have gone different. But the thing is, there was a perception that there was no need for that because the environment is so safe that the risk profile is so low. But that doesn't mean that the threat no longer existed. It was still there. And unfortunately, it manifested in a way that I don't think she may have expected.
it was just ignored. I think it comes back as it always does to the mindset. It all starts there. I think you need to figure out for yourself that if something should happen, and this can be regarding your security or a medical emergency, the fact of the matter is that someone, whether that's a policeman, a security staff member, or a medical staff member, someone must respond to that. Someone must get them on the line, and they must then come to you. All of this is going to take time, which varies quite drastically.
Well, it's that
Specifically, and in the meantime, what do you do? So even if you do live in a safe estate like we were talking about, or in your safe city in Australia, in Canada, wherever the case might be, it's a given that you don't have to live like this with fences and barbed wire and stuff like that, generally. But if you have the mindset about I am my first responder, then you will still take certain precautions, as within the guidelines of whatever law you're falling under, and also specifically with something like a medical situation. I mean, if one family member is prone to get asthma attacks, then I think it's good that you know how to sort that and what you must do if there's a very severe case of asthma and the pump maybe battles to work or something. So the mindset is pretty much the be all and everything. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I mean, you bring up some great examples, because in discussions like this, we really tend to fixate on the gun, which is important. But, here's a simple example. Do you have an EpiPen? If someone had developed a seafood allergy, and we're close to hospital because you're busy having prawns on the beach in Mozambique, and suddenly you can't breathe anymore, what do you do? Do you have a plan? Because stuff like that happens. Do you have a fire extinguisher in your house? Even better, do you know if you forget a pan on the stove with cooking oil in it and it catches fire, do you know how to put that fire out? And the correct answer is do not throw water into it, because go YouTube what that looks like, by the way, if you end up doing that. That's fun. Everyone, not everyone.
Technically you can throw water at it, but only once.
Yes, exactly. Lots of people have gone solar with the load shedding, right? So they've got garages and houses full of lithium-ion batteries. Go take a look at what a thermal runaway and what these things look like. So people have got a house stacked with lithium-ion batteries. They've got gas because they're running gas stoves, gas geysers. Some of them have got propellant in the safe or in the cupboard because they reload ammunition. Your house could be an IED and you're not even aware of it, and you need to know how to deal with it catching fire. And I don't know if people are necessarily prepared for that eventuality, because stuff like this happens. I mean, you see people's cell phones and laptops blowing up because there's a fault within the charging mechanism, and they leave it plugged in on the kitchen counter, and they come back and half their house burns down. It's about thinking beyond just trusting what you've been presented with, and being aware of what the pitfalls are, and thinking broader about your threat and risk profiles.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about lithium batteries. I am aware of a case in one of these high-end estates where the owner's golf cart developed a problem of the flaming kind. And it's had to do with the batteries, and I mean, that's one hell of a fire. And they could save the house. I mean, the estate has got fire services as well, which I think is pretty awesome.
That's awesome.
But the fact of the matter is that these things happen, and you don't have to get paranoid about it, as you said, but you need to consider these things. And those batteries, if they decide to explode, that's problematic. So it's probably best to have some sort of maybe an escape plan, even in case something like that happens, which I don't think too many people think about.
I don't think a lot of people think about it, and it's a strange thing to me because we think about it enough to say, well, we need to have insurance, right? And we'll pay lots of money monthly and annually. Sorry, my little boy's just interrupting me a bit there. Monthly and annually to insurance companies to cover us in the event of these things happening. So we acknowledge already, not even subconsciously, we actively acknowledge, okay, there is a possibility of there being significant financial harm, even death if you have life insurance. So I'm spending money on getting insurance policies in place, but I'm not quite spending the time and the effort to put things in place regarding what I can do when confronted with something that can cause me harm, so I can stop it before I need a policy to pay out. And I think if we can shift that mindset, or that paradigma verschuiving, it's a beautiful Afrikaans word. Then
shifting the paradigm.
Shifting the paradigm is key.
Yes. I want to come back to the security aspect, the personal safety aspect though. Would you agree, because I happen to think this is the case, but would you agree that for a personal defense kind of a situation, then in general, I mean, it's not always the answer, and it's not always the tool that you need to or want to use, but generally speaking, a firearm that you are very proficient with and is on your person, not in your safe, is the better option to have in terms of having a tool that you can use to defend yourself with.
Absolutely, and without a doubt. And I'm going to have a little asterisk and a caveat. So, defensive tools that I carry is pepper spray and a firearm. And depending upon, if I'm walking my dogs or something, I always have an expandable baton that I go stroll with as well, because that also has a use. I have had more use in practice for the pepper spray than I've had for the gun, simply because if a dog gets out of a yard and aggressively comes at your dogs you're walking, and you need to deal with that dog, the pepper spray was way better. That's a better way of dealing with the situation than a gun. Okay, even though under some circumstances the gun might be justified. However, the one time I did need the gun, it did what it had to do, and it saved innocent life from being prematurely ended, i.e., it stopped a murder, at least one.
Yeah.
You need the layers of response of non or less lethal capability, but the less lethal capability can never, even if it's used more often, even if it's going to be the thing you might go to 99 times out of 100, not having the lethal capacity that one time in 100 when you do need it is going to be very bad for you if you don't have the ability to actually project lethal force. Because when the chips are down that badly, it's definitely are you going home okay, or away with minor injuries, or are you going to go to the ICU or the morgue, or someone that you care very deeply about? Similar. That is the importance of having a personal firearm that you're proficient with, that you have on your person, and that you perform the necessary maintenance on to make sure that you maintain its reliability.
Well, it's certainly a force multiplier. No,
for sure. We've seen so many incidents of guys taken by surprise, and girls, by the way, men and women. And I don't have the full Excel spreadsheet of incidents in South Africa over the past 10 years, but I mean, there's a nice media collection of these types of things. There are so many instances of people that are taken by surprise out in the street or in parking lots or at social venues or in their own houses, where they're outnumbered 3-1, 4-1, 5-1 or more, and with armed robbers or armed assailants. And in spite of everything counting against them, they still managed to produce their own firearm and win that fight, and win it convincingly, because they could, right? They had the necessary skill, they had the mindset, and they had the tool, and they were capable of rising to the challenge presented by that confrontation. If they didn't have the gun, there would have been no way for them to have actually triumphed over those circumstances. They being the person they were was key, but without the pistol or without the gun they had at the time, highly unlikely that they would have triumphed. That is the value of the firearm as the force multiplier.
There certainly is value in it. And the sad reality for me is we live in a country where this type of thing is prevalent. Criminals, especially the ones who do violent crimes, home robberies, where they come into your home while you're there, hijackings, that sort of stuff. I mean, those guys are armed. It makes sense to have something that can multiply your force in answer to that. And like with everything, nothing is 100% guarantee. The only thing you're doing once you adopt this mindset that you want to be, or you responder, is that you are juggling the odds a little bit more in your favor.
Yeah, that's exactly it. There are no guarantees. I think Kelly McCann put it best. He said results are always conditional, right? So the gun is not a magic talisman that just imbues you with the superpower. What it allows you to achieve is dependent on a lot of factors regarding what you are capable of doing, firstly. And secondly, luck, right? There is still a dice roll to these things that you cannot control. The French have a term for it called friction de guerre, which I think means friction of war, fortune of war. And it is that undefinable random element to these types of confrontations where, I mean, it's typical of the American experience in Afghanistan, where you have the top of the top tier special forces operator with millions of dollars worth of training and equipment, and everything on his side, just getting absolutely murdered by a toothless, ragged, illiterate peasant hiding in a cave with a rusty AK-47 that's 50 to 60 years old.
Exactly.
I mean, that happens, right? You sometimes, no matter what you do, all courses run ill and you still lose. However, your chances of winning are significantly higher if you put in the work and are adequately equipped. And that's, I think, the important thing that people need to focus on is control what you can control and put the work in the bit that you can control. We should talk about the July thing, 2021 in a bit, but sorry, Ian, you carry.
That's fine, thanks. Talking about Afghanistan specifically, I think Afghanistan has shown more than one modern, well-trained, well-equipped army that there are no guarantees.
That is putting it mildly, right? The British learned some unpleasant lessons there, and I think they were in Afghanistan twice in the late 1800s. The Russians learned that in the 1980s. They were there for about 10 years, and the Americans were there for 20. And you know, I'm not a big fan of Wikipedia. It's the least accurate and most biased source of encyclopedic knowledge. But the war in Afghanistan is labeled as a Taliban victory, guys. Because ultimately that's the way it went. And it again shows that you can have all the equipment, all the money, all the skill in the world. If you don't have the strategy, if you don't have the long-term plan about managing your situations and managing your crisis, you're still going to lose, right? And I mean, yeah, being your own first responder.
Carry on.
I'll just finish off by saying being your own first responder is also thinking strategically. Okay, and I don't mean you need to get the family risk board game out, and it's thinking strategically about what are you trying to achieve by this journey, right? What is your long-term goal and objective?
Well, that's the thing for me, and that's why I mentioned Afghanistan because you mentioned it. But to me, it is a good indicator of the fact that doesn't matter what you do, there are no guarantees. It's as applicable in your personal safety or your home safety or your vehicle safety. You can only do things about the circumstances that you can have control over. So, get some training, be fit, have maybe some medical equipment at hand that you may need, be trained on that so that you know how to use it. Firearm, even pepper spray, something as simple and simplistic as pepper spray. If you haven't been in a situation where you are under duress and under stress, to apply that pepper spray effectively, you are probably going to fail somehow. So once again, with something as simple as that, look at getting some training so that you understand the application of the tool that much better. To me, that's part of the whole mindset, and that's how you gamble the odds a little bit more in your favor, which I think is the bottom line of the whole thing. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, and I think there's a white pill and a black pill approach to understanding that there are no guarantees. The black pill approach is, oh well, it doesn't really matter then, does it? And what's the point of investing all this time and effort and stuff if there are no guarantees? It's people who want to believe that they can, if they work towards a certain thing, that they can guarantee an outcome, and if they can't guarantee the outcome, well, what's the point? And then you've got the white pill view on it that says, okay, cool. I fully understand there are no guarantees here. I'm incorporating that into my thinking and into my strategy. And what I'm going to do with this understanding of this reality is that I'm going to put in what I can. I'm going to do everything I can to control as many of the variables as I can control, and control them as well as I can. Limited obviously by my time, my ability, my capacity, and my finances. Because let's be brutally honest, if all of us had $1 million individual training budget that was paid for us by the government, we would all be probably choose to invest the maximum amount of time and effort into becoming as good as humanly possible. Unfortunately, we all have jobs, we have families, we have other responsibilities. And the thing we must never forget this reality check, is the reason why you are doing all of this stuff in the first place is to allow you to enjoy life more. What is the point of fixating so hard on being your own first responder, and living it almost as a lifestyle, and you forget to actually enjoy life because it's not actually feeding, unless you're a crazy person like me that actually enjoys that type of trading and stuff, and it's part of your lifestyle. Sure. If you're a normal human being, the only reason you want to do this is say, I want to be able to actually feel confident about what I'm doing every day, and I want to enjoy. I want to fill myself with the joy of life by having experiences that are meaningful to me, and it's not just about guns and nonsense and managing problems.
Yeah. Balance. It's all about balance.
It's about balance.
And everybody figures out their own balance at the end of the day. Yes. But before you do figure out your balance, you need to figure out your mindset, and realize that even if the police takes 3 minutes to get to you, it might be too late.
3 minutes is a very long time if you're sitting at the mercy of a person who's trying to do really bad things to you. Yes. It only takes 90 seconds for you to bleed out from arterial bleed. Exactly. Just be aware of these things. It doesn't mean you should go into a flat panic about it. Just be aware of them and address them when and how you can. And this is also just caveat, right? So I appreciate people thinking that I'm a good source of knowledge. That's really cool and nice. But don't take everything I say as gospel and go test what I tell you versus other stuff that's out there. But with a major warning on this, okay? Online forums and Reddit, subreddits and stuff like this, those things are terrible echo chambers where there's a group mentality that's going to encourage you in a direction that the tribe, being an online tribe, deems appropriate and acceptable. and they are
Yes.
likely to discourage you from things that they find unacceptable. Sometimes these things are grounded in good rhyme and reason and thinking, and other times they are not grounded in good rhyme, reason, and thinking. And you need to, if you're under-equipped with your own knowledge and you're still trying to seek knowledge, those places may not be good sources of information for you, and you unfortunately will have to go find people with a higher degree of expertise, or authors with a higher degree of expertise, and go read their stuff. I've got a very big training library. It's sitting here on my shelf. A lot of those books are old. They were written in the 70s and 80s, and I find a lot of the stuff in them sometimes much more relevant than people writing on the topic that comes out, in modern day.
Yes.
The same warning is, if you pick a defensive instructor, there are good ones and there are excellent ones and there are very bad ones. And sometimes you don't know what they are until it's too late. Occasionally it helps. In fact, I fully encourage it, is go do your own reading, go find the own standards online of what is a good defensive pistol standard, and work your way to achieving that defensive pistol standard on your own. Go to a range by yourself, shoot the drill, figure out your grip, your sight picture, your trigger press, so that when you do go on a course eventually, and a guy's trying to dissuade you from a way that you shoot that's giving you a good result, then you might not be dealing with a very good instructor. I've had students on courses with me that have weird grips and weird manipulation techniques, but they are nailing the drills 10 out of 10. Their accuracy, their speed, their control, their consistency is really high. And other people keep trying to correct them all the time. I say, just leave them alone, right? What they're doing looks weird, but for them, it's clearly working, because we can measure the outcome and the result consistently. Stop trying to change the way they do stuff because it looks different to you. If it's working for this person, maybe they're a freak, maybe they just work different. We're all freaks. Just leave them alone.
Yeah.
Right? That's
Exactly.
sorry, a bit of a rant.
No, well,
yeah.
It's true. Well, I'm glad you got that out of your system. It's true though, and again, it comes down to acknowledging the fact that that person has made a choice to start a training path, and I think it's important to do whatever you can to assist that person on that path in a good, positive, supportive way. Instead of just saying, "No, that's not. Don't do that. Don't do that." You can correct him as you go along. But what people generally find, and again, yeah, you are welcome to differ from me or not, but generally, if you continue on a training path, so you don't just do a once-off course and maybe in 10 years' time another one, but you do training on a more regular basis. As you start understanding your own shortcomings, number one, you gain more knowledge, so you tend to think about things different. And number two, you will almost automatically start, if you work on it, correcting stuff as you go along to make yourself better at what you're trying to be.
Well, that's exactly it. It depends heavily on the attitude of the student towards their own training path.
Yeah.
I mean, you get people that go on training courses because they want to feel good about themselves. So they want to feel that their skill set is good. And I understand why. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing per se, but you also need to be realistic about your skill set. I seldom go to the shooting range and leave happy, which is quite sad, because I never quite performed to the level that I'd like to, and I don't know if I ever will, because I've set a specific standard that I believe to be attainable, and I don't know if it's realistic. But the interesting thing about looking back of over 2 or 3 years of very unhappy training and practice sessions is that the trajectory of skill development has always been up. So
yes.
If you go to a training course or a training session out there and you're not happy with how you've done, that might be a good thing. It's as long as that doesn't discourage you, and as long as that encourages you to try harder. Alternatively, if that's going to be a deal breaker for you and you want to feel good, then do things that make you feel good, but that are still hard, right? And have an attitude of like, wow, okay, I didn't quite pass that, but I came pretty damn close. I feel pretty happy about myself. Let's see how I'm going to do with this next time. And you just tap into whatever you need to tap in emotionally in order to drive you forward, to keep going. Because the trick here is to keep going, to be consistent, to not skip over the hard stuff, and see it as an investment in you, because that's really what it is. So if we had to summarize at the end of this discussion, what is the spirit of being your own first responder? Is it's an investment in yourself, because you're spending time, you're spending money, you're sweating, and you might be bleeding. So there's a lot of effort, a lot of work, a lot of productivity that you're putting towards a project, and that project is you and your capabilities. And that might include taking a jog around the block because your cardiovascular fitness is so low, and that's really all you're capable of. But you want to start working at something, or getting an exercise program. That's already an investment in your capacity.
I think that is a good summary. That works for me. And I think we can stop there with today's video. Gideon, thank you so much for your time again, and taking the time to talk to me. And to the viewers, please, if you find value in these videos, remember to click that like and subscribe button to help us grow the channel, so we can get the message out to more and more people. If you've watched till the end, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm certain Gideon appreciates it as well. Gideon, thank you, and I bid you adieu, and we will talk again soon.
Very much so, Rian. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.